evening everybody, thanks for joining me for Coffee and Card at Home. So today we are on week 2 of using the Stars Are Shining bundle, and these are the cards that we made this morning on our Zoom session, and I'm going to show you how to make those this evening. So we're using the bundle which is the Stars Are Shining stamp set, and that coordinates with the Starlit Punch as well. I'm going to be using both of those together tonight, and we are making these cards which actually are easier than they look, to be honest. They're quite quick to put together, so another good one for kind of batch making, I think. So what we're going to need, if I just put those over to the side, is we're going to need a real red card base, which is half of an A4 sheet A4 sheet cut in half at 14.8 centimetres and then scored at 10.5 centimetres. Hi Tracy, thanks for joining. And then we're going to have a piece of basic white to fit on top of that as a layer, and that's slightly smaller, so 14.3 centimetres by 10 centimetres. Then I've got just a scrap of basic white for the stamping the stars onto, and then a very small, I think this is 1.5 centimetres by any length depending on the sentiment you're using, but obviously you could make it bigger if you needed to, depending on what size sentiment you're going to go for. So first of all, as I usually do, I'm just going to get my base scored, and then we don't need that right till the very end, but I like to get that done first and put out of the way. Then we're going to bring back our rectangle of basic white, and we're going to get some stamping done on that. So I decided to use sort of 3 quite bold colours, so I've gone for Misty, Moonlight and Real Red and Garden Green to stamp my baubles, which if I just bring that back you can see I've got those there. And there are the 3 different, well there's actually 4 different bauble shapes, but we're not going to use that tiny one, so I'm using these 3 bauble shapes with the little bit of string that goes with it as well, so they're going to be stamped in those colours. Then we're also using this star, which is what we're going to punch out with the punch, and then this star just for some extra kind of background decoration. And then I've used one of the sentiments from here, which is Be Merry and Bright, but as you can see there's a few others that you could use if you wanted to. So let's start stamping our baubles on. So first of all, I'm just going to grab whichever one kind of comes first. It doesn't matter which colour you start with or where you position it. On my samples earlier I'd done one where I put my sentiment on this side, and then I'd done another one where I'd put it on the other side, so it's entirely up to you. You could have it so that it goes at the bottom, you could have it coming out from the side, from the top, wherever you want it really. So you've got a little bit of choice there with kind of where you decide to put things. So I'm going to go for my green, and I'm going to pop that sort of in the middle, I think. So I'm going to get all the baubles done first, and then I'm going to put my strings on next. So just so that I don't end up getting ink where I don't want it, I'm just going to close up my ink pads once I finish with them. So let's go with the red next and choose a different one. So this is the sort of longer, thinner one, and I think I'm going to go about there with that one. And then that leaves me with my Misty, Moonlight, which I'm going to go with the other small one that's a bit wider. And I think I'm going to go with putting my sentiment at the top this time. For a change, just do something different. So I'm going to pop this one lower down. There we go. So while I've still got my blue out, I'm going to stamp on my string. Now, one thing to bear in mind is, I don't know if you can see it very well, but you've got kind of like a bow, and then you've got these two little bits sticking out at the top. Now, those bits need to go fairly close to the top of your bauble, and then they'll look like they're attached. It's a bit fiddly to get used to where the best positioning is to start with. And then the other thing that I tried to do was to line up my card so that I could then try to use the lines on the grid paper to help me to line it all up. Now, what I've just realised with this one is that this string obviously is not going to be quite long enough for this particular one. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to ink it up the other way around, and then I'm just going to move it down a bit, just make sure I don't get it out of camera. I'm going to try to line it up with what I've done already. So I've turned it around and I'm lining it up with what I've done already. That's not too bad. It's fairly easy because you've got photopolymer stamps. If you'd got red rubber stamps and you couldn't see what you were stamping, that would be much more difficult. But actually, my sentiment will probably go across there anyway, so probably don't need to worry too much. So I've picked red next. So we're going to do our string for our red one this time. And this one is a bit shorter, so I won't need to re-stamp it. Again, try and make sure, if you can, line it up with the grid lines. That helps you just get it in the right place, hopefully. I find it a bit more tricky to do this in sort of the evening when I've got the lights on rather than in the daylight. It's a lot easier to see what you're doing in the daylight. And then lastly, I'm going to do the green. So ink that one up again, and then just try and see if you can get it to line up with your grid lines on your grid paper. Make sure it's low enough over the bauble, and then stamp down. That's not too bad. That's the fiddliest part done, really. There we go. So we've got our baubles in place. Now we want to do some embellishing with the stars. So I'm just going to put that to the side, and I'm going to grab back my little piece here, and I'm going to stamp my stars. So they come in a cluster all together, which is quite handy. I'm going to stamp this in gold. So this is gold pigment ink, which sadly is retired by Stampin' Up now. And I'm just going to check which way around my punch is going to work for me, which will be that way. So I'm going to try and make sure that when I stamp it down, my piece of card will fit in that way around. It just makes it a bit easier. I'm just going to re-ink that a little bit more. So this gold ink is really lovely, but like I say, it's not available anymore from Stampin' Up, but I'm sure you could find something elsewhere. Hi Tracy, thanks for joining us. We missed both of you this morning. We have quite a select group this morning. So only 4 of us this morning, so glad you could join tonight anyway. Right, so we've got that stamped. I'm going to get that cut out first, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those on first and then work out where I want to put my other stars. So I'm just going to cut this out. So I'm just going to try and line that up a bit of a wiggle till I feel happy that I've got it in a good position. And then punch when I'm ready. And then this really tiny star that I've got here, I'm not going to stick that on. You could do if you wanted to, but it's so small. I think that can go in the bin. So we've got these ones here that we're going to stick on. And if I just bring back my original, I stuck those on randomly where I wanted to with dimensionals. So I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm just going to find my dimensionals. So some of them you can use the large dimensionals for. A couple of them you're going to need to use the mini ones. So I'll start with the biggest star first. So where I'm going to go. So I was thinking I'm putting my sentiment here. So I just want to think about my positioning of what I'm going to go for. Then this other big one you can use with a larger dimensional. So I'll go that one there. And then I've got these slightly smaller ones. I think we can fit a large one onto this one, if I remember rightly. Yeah, that just fits on. There, and then these two ones we are going to need to use some smaller dimensionals for those. Just peel the back off that one. And then just another small one to go on this one. This one's very small, so just have to be a bit careful where you position that one. I think we'll go there. So I've got all of my stars that I punched out stuck on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that other tiny star and bring back my gold ink. And we're just going to stamp that randomly all over the back of the card, wherever you feel it needs to go. You can stamp off the edge as well. And this doesn't matter if it's going to go behind the sentiment, because actually it might look quite nice behind there. If you're not happy with how many you've got on, you can always go back and add a few more afterwards. And then just before we finish all of our stamping, I'm just going to get back the Misty Moonlight. And I'm going to stamp my sentiment on here. So, like I say, I chose Be Merry and Bright, but you could choose whichever you wanted to. I'm just going to line that up with my grid paper and stamp that on there. And actually on the red it looks almost black, doesn't it? But using a nice bold colour, you could probably use your gold on there if you wanted to as well. And then you can choose how to finish off the end on there. So I'm just going to put it on where I want it to go. Just decide how isn't it? Now this scrap was just cut like that, but actually I quite like that end, so I think I'm going to go for cutting it like that. Obviously just a little closer to my end of my words. And we're going to stick that on in a moment, so we'll leave that for a second. So now we're going to attach that to the card front, so we're just going to add a little bit of Tombow on the back. There we go. And then we're just going to stick that on. Just try and make sure it's kind of even all the way around. Press that down. And then we're going to stick that sentiment on. We're going to take it right up to the very edge. So it's going to overlap that white up to that red edge. And just pop a few dimensionals on the back here. Oops, okay, a few didn't stick. Don't want it sticking in the wrong place. I'm just going to line it up again with my grid lines, just to help me try and get that nice and straight. There we go, and that is all done. So if I just bring back the other ones we did, you can see they're all ever so slightly different, depending on where we've positioned the stars and where we've positioned the sentiment, and obviously also the baubles as well, how we've hung those. So you could do some slight variations, and like I say, quite good for batch making. You could get quite a few of those stamped very quickly, I think, and put together. So perfect for when you need quite a few. Definitely a good one for sitting and getting a few of those made all in one go. So just a quick reminder of what we've used. So we have used a Real Red C6 card base with a rectangle of basic white measuring 14.3 by 10 centimeters. Then we used a scrap of basic white to stamp our stars, a scrap of Real Red, which the depth of this is 1.5 centimeters, length obviously as long as you want it, depending on your sentiment. Inks we used were Misty, Moonlight, Garden Green and Real Red, and then the gold, and then just adhesives were Tombow and some mini and standard size dimensionals. And then just to remind you, the stamp set we've used is Stars Are Shining, which coordinates with the Starlit Punch, which of course is our coffee and card bundle of the month, really. So if there's anything that you need any help with, drop me a message or leave me a comment on the video. Or if you'd like to get hold of any of the products we've used, then likewise you can drop me a message and I will get that sorted for you. So next week we'll be carrying on with the same stamp set for week 3, and we'll be doing something a little different, again using those different features, and hopefully coming up with something a little bit different. So I hope you can join me next week as well. You're welcome, Tracy, glad you've enjoyed it, and for those of you that might need to go off and make them, I hope you will share them with me on my group page as well, so that we can all see what you've been up to. Anyway, take care, see you next time, bye.